All right, folks, we're going to begin. And if folks join us along the way, that'll be fine. Welcome. My name's Rusia Mahuddin. I am the principal of Universal Partnership. Leaders of Embodied Organizing, the 11-week intensive is a program that I created and am hosting. Shall we have us introduce each other ourselves? Mo George is a long-time organizer. Mo, you want to introduce yourself? This is multitasking to join us, so I appreciate that. Shall I can help unmute you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Mo. Sorry, I'm in the car. Hanging out with my sister. Got out the hospital and getting some care with her. And I'm a part of Universal Partnership.
Thank you, Mo.
Mm-hmm.
Elba and Tivo, would you like to introduce yourselves? Say a little bit about who you are, where you are, what brings you to the webinar today.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Good. Yeah, so I'm just wanting to learn more about the approach. Sounds like a really great merger of the somatic and the embodiment and then the larger change. So I was curious to learn more about that. I've trained with Wendy Palmer and Dr. Richard Strozzi Heckler. I also did a little bit of the GS, the generative somatics, which is more of the social change and embodiment work. So I'm very curious to learn more.
Amazing. Thank you, Tivo. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Elba? Okay, we will include Elba if she can, she's unmuted. So Elba, when you're ready, just give us a ping and we'll do a quick intro for you. So Tivo, you asked a really good question around what is the integration? How does that happen? I think it's a larger question of how is embodied organizing different from how some folks or many of us might have learned organizing? And the idea and the methodology of embodied organizing really integrates embodied leadership specifically that has components of somatics in it, is adapted and informed by somatics and my teachings. I also learned from Richard at Strozzi Institute about 15 years ago. And I worked, I trained under and worked alongside Stacey Generative Somatics.
Lucia.
Yeah.
I don't want. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if people can take you off of speakerphone with their phone, because with Zoom, if everybody's on speakerphone, it creates a distortion. So I'm actually only getting, people get every other one of your words.
Oh.
So people have to come off of speakerphone. That's a key to Zoom.
Okay. Let me, I can plug myself in too.
Yeah.
That
because you start sounding like a robot and people miss every word. Because too many people, if too many people put you on speakerphone on Zoom.
Gotcha.
Just a heads up.
While I am waiting, oh, here we go. How's that? A little better?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. Elba shared on the chat that they are listening, but seems that the mic is not working. Elba, feel free to write any questions or comments you have in the chat, and I'll share with the group. So I would, one of the things that I'd like to do in sort of talking about what the Leo Intensive is, and hopefully answer Thibaut's question as well in more detail, is really just to introduce myself a little bit, have Mo introduce themselves, and then we can sort of talk about the grounding methodology for embodied organizing, how it sort of came about, etc. So I come from a community organizing background. I was not formally trained when I began working at the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition in, obviously, the Bronx. So a lot of my knowledge then came from like the experience of doing organizing. And like most folks then and likely now, we sort of, I worked a lot of hours. Like it was not unusual to work 10, 12, 14, 16 hours. It was not unusual for me to spend the night at the office before a huge event or action. And what frequently happens as I got older, I started to have less energy to do the work, was getting burnt out. And so what was really missing is the individual change process or processes that actually begins to create on an individual level the kind of world that I was sort of working really hard to create for members and the communities that I served. So embodied organizing really integrates and centers the humanity of the organizer who is in service of their community instead of their labor. Right, so I pioneered the integration of somatics into an organizing framework. Let's see, almost 15 years ago, I co-founded a national intermediary social justice leadership where the sort of methodology, the roots of the methodology, and the integration began. So that's sort of like the origins where I came from. A lot of the model of embodied organizing is really rooted in my experience and then the trainings that I've offered over the last couple of decades to folks. I want to say hi to Danny, who has joined us. And do you want to quickly introduce yourself before I have Mo introduce themselves?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Danny from Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation. I currently work at Cypress Hills Senior Housing. I'm their service coordinator. I'm also part with the displacement prevention team here in Cypress Hills, along with Alexa, who's also signing in currently.
Yeah, amazing. Cypress Hills is one of the organizations that was a part of my previous job. I know and trained Julia. I don't know if she's still there.
Yes.
And then
she's not there. She's not there any longer. But yes, she left in January.
Well, that's good. Transitions are good, I imagine. She's amazing. And then Future of Tomorrow, I trained a bunch of youth organizers there, and
I came out of Future of Tomorrow, actually.
I'm sorry?
I came out of Future of Tomorrow.
Oh, amazing. Alexa, you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Alexa. I am started 3 months ago. I am an organizer, community organizer with the Coalition for Community Advancement. and I work with Danny in preventing displacement in Cypress Hills. The organization started an internal coordinated effort, and so Danny and I are doing that displacement prevention work.
Amazing. Welcome. We're just doing quick intros, and one of the participants, TiVo, asked a question around being curious about the integration of thematics and embodied leadership, and we're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes. Mo, can you say a little bit about yourself, like your organizing background, why you're the perfect person to co-lead this process, this intensive?
Hi, certainly. So I'm Mo. I come from a union organizing training background. Spent a number of years at 1199 SEIU, a number of years working with LGBT organizing, so I'm a team that won marriage equality in New York City and state. Most recently have been doing housing and homeless organizing and been organizing over 27 years. Have been training under Rusia now for, wow, a lot of that. I think it's close to maybe 10 years now, because it was my whole time at TVH. And I think one of the reasons why I love Leo and the training is because I've been organizing a long time, and of trainings, but trainings that actually speak to you and why you do this work and how you can do this work from a place of sustainability and a place that also a place that deals with, that has you confront your trauma and how that shows up in the work, is one of the reasons why I love, training with Sia, and I'm beyond excited to be participating in Leo, because I do think, especially as folks of color, we're not trained to organize that way, but we have to, because we don't leave our trauma behind when we organize, and we need to learn how to organize with our trauma in mind. Javed.
We can see.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mo.
Thanks.
So what is different about embodied organizing? I believe Mo touched upon it a bit. I had shared earlier that embodied organizing, unlike most of us learned Alinsky style organizing or some version of it, or labor organizing like Mo, and they all have a specific methodology and sort of center different things. Embodied organizing really is about centering the focal point of humanity of those who are actually organizing. So the organizer, of course, the communities individually and collectively, and then that becomes the sort of springboard of where the work actually happens. So each of the skills that you'll learn in embodied organizing does a couple of things, right? So one, it gives you the skill of, like, how do you base build? How do you do leadership development? How do you develop a campaign, both as an organizer, but also in tandem with members, right? So these aren't the cookie cutter skills that you might have learned or have heard of. They're completely created with this new methodology of organizing that again centers the humanity, the balance, and the resilience of the organizer. And it integrates embodied leadership in each of the skills building trainings. But every session will couple embodied leadership, so the leadership of the individuals that will participate in Leo, as well as learning organizing skills. So we really want the larger sort of broad outcome is to really have organizers feel really skilled in what they're doing, but also have the understanding, the deep understanding and the skills of how to really navigate organizing work in a way that creates a lot of self-care, that does a lot of healing justice work, that integrates Sufi and Buddhism, mindfulness, activities and skills and practices. So the organizer that emerges at the end of the Leo intensive is someone who is really grounded in their own, the full breadth of their own power and their understanding of how to navigate doing organizing work under a lot of intense pressure, right? The political climate is kind of difficult to talk about in just a few words, to say the least. But how do we actually organize in a way where the direct and secondary trauma that we experience as organizers is something that we're able to handle without having to compromise our dignity? Yeah. Along with the methodology, this is the last thing I'll say before I open it up. Along with the methodology of like the integration of embodied leadership into an organizing framework, there's two ways in which we look at how do we create a practice-driven program where folks integrate the theoretical learning of like, here are the basics and advanced ways in which we do one-on-ones, we do campaign development, and how do we marry that with the experiential, which is like going out and actually doing it, like getting reps. I don't know if you all have heard of like muscle memory for athletes who sort of like shoot a basketball 100 times or swing a bat and hit a ball 100 times just so their muscle becomes, memorizes and embodies that, those set of actions. It's very similar to that. Like, how do we create muscle memory around the things that make for an effective organizer? So theoretical learning that is essentially and integrated with the experiential learning of actually doing the things that you are learning. Okay, I am going to stop and ask if you all have questions. I'm gonna unmute everybody. And there's gonna be an echo, so.
I'm gonna put myself on mute.
Yeah, mute yourself if you don't have a question. And I'm looking at the group chat just in case Elba has something. So what are some thoughts? What are some questions that y'all might have?
I think the only questions that Danny and I had were around like logistics in terms of like date and location.
Yeah, y'all are calling in, right?
Yeah.
So on the website, there's a section on schedule. All the sessions will be held in the New York area, right? And the day-long sessions will happen in the city. The opening retreat will be at Bailey Farms, which is about 20-30 minutes from the city, depending upon where you're coming from. I believe it's a 30-minute train ride, Metro North ride, and we'll launch the intensive October 22nd to the 24th with a 3-day opening retreat. And then we will follow with weekly day-long sessions, right? So the schedule and the structure is really geared towards learning, right? I think spreading it out over the course of 9 sessions is important that happen weekly. So several things happen, right? Like when people spend an enormous amount of time together, even if it's like the opening retreat in 3 days, you begin to build intimacy and a community of support from the folks who are participating. So that's a critical part of how the sort of space and the community, the Leo community for this fall will be set. So you all have each other to rely on. The sessions will impart, obviously, both organizing skills, embodied organizing skills, and personal embodied leadership skills. So you're actually fortifying your leadership as you're learning. There's let's see when it ends. January 17th, it says 2012, but it really should say 2020 will be the last session, which will be basically a graduation. And folks will practice for themselves public speaking to actualize the skills on how to be a effective public speaker that then you can turn around and train and develop members on, and other staff if you'd like, depending upon what your role is. How was that? Was that good? Was there more that you needed?
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's also a downloadable, let's see, PDF that sort of has who we are, what embodied organizing is, the approach, and then sort of like the 3 areas of development that will happen individually and collectively, which is you'll learn embodied organizing skills, and you will learn mindfulness skills and embodied leadership skills. I can go, let's see. Just to give you some idea of the embodied organizing skills, right? So understanding the history of community organizing, obviously that is a great influencer on me because that's how I learned the work. So it's a part of the development of this methodology. And then like, what are some other methodologies for social change? Like advocacy, activism, social services, community development, all of which serve a purpose in creating change. Obviously, drawing distinctions between those social services and organizing, and then what is the role of the organizer. Understanding power dynamics, both as a sort of like, what is power? How do we do it? That's sort of like pointing out the obvious, but also really understanding power and power dynamics in terms of what is the kind of membership and community y'all are seeking to change or shift that really allows for as many people to be in their power and exercise their power. So we're not sort of replicating the systems that we're trying to dismantle in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, effective base building and outreach that integrates a somatic body-based exercises. All of these actually integrate embodied leadership exercises that are practice-driven, that are body-based, including one-on-ones. How do you do somatic leadership development? One thing that is unique to embodied leadership that I created is called somatic campaign development. That really looks at how do we understand the history of the communities that we are serving. as a way to acutely develop and align tactics and strategies that are meant to um, support community members to take action instead of, asking them to do something that they're not ready to do based on their historical shaping, like all the experiences and relationships to institution and power that community might have experienced over the last 10, 20, 30 years. Let me stop. What else y'all got? Thibault, am I doing a good job in explaining the integration? Oh, yes, Thibault answered yes on the group chat. Any other questions, comments, points of clarity? Are you all looking to apply? Do you have questions around the application process?
Can you say a little bit about the application process?
Yes. It's super simple. Let's see. The application is really short. It just sort of like gives some clarity around like, who is the person that's applying? Why are you applying? What do you hope to get out of it? Do you have organizational support? The intensive includes having a leadership coach for each of you. So having some commitment to being supported by an embodied coach. And it's really one of the main things that two main things that we want to get from the application process is one, that it helps us customize and shape each of the training sessions to who's going to be in the room, right? So it's not going to be like session one or the opening retreat, or any of the sessions aren't going to be like the previous intensives I've done or the mini series that I've done, because the people in the room will be different. So the application process gives me and the co-leads an insight into how to structure each of the sessions in a way that best serves the individuals that are in the room. So that's one purpose of the application. And then the second is to really ensure that the organization that folks are working in, if they are attached to an organization, which is not a requirement, is committing to fully support the person or persons who are participating to ensure their success, right? That there aren't any barriers, because every time you learn a skill, you're going to be practicing that skill, and there are key milestones and metrics that have been designed to actualize the theoretical learnings of the skills that y'all will be learning. And so having space to do that and having organizational support to do that is really critical. And the application is at the end of the LEO page, universalpartnership.org/LEO. How's that? Was that Alexa or Danny? Can't remember.
That was Alexa. Thanks so much.
Sure. Elba has asked, is the application just for the retreat or the entire program? Can you do one without the other? That's a great question. The opening retreat, the application is for the whole intensive, so 11 weeks. And no, you cannot do the opening retreat or the sessions separately. It's all sort of designed to flow from one thing to the next. So the opening retreat will introduce, dump, and have you all practice an enormous amount of skills, both organizing and embodied leadership, as the sort of individual springboard that each of you will need in order to finish the remaining sessions, right? In a way that's like specifically designed to help everybody succeed. And it's one of the reasons why every participant will have a coach as a part of the program. One, I think everybody in the world needs a coach, a leadership coach or a life coach or whatever works for you all. But having a coach to help guide you in your change process and your learning process is a critical part of how we identify folks really succeeding in this program. Was that okay, Elba? Great. Elba Rhodes, great, thank you. We had somebody call in. Is that you, Mo? I don't know who that is. There's a 718 number.
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
I couldn't get on I couldn't get back into the Zoom for some reason. So I just called in. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Do you wanna share? There's been a bunch of questions. I don't know if there's anything you want to chime in on, or if folks have other things that they want to share.
I don't. Yeah, I'm free for any questions. I don't have anything I want to share. I got cut off, so I missed a lot of it. My phone overheated, and I think because I had it in the sun, it just shut off altogether and wouldn't let me back on Zoom.
Got it.
Besides the fact that I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. How y'all doing? Y'all got any more questions, comments, anything you want to share? Okay, let me share a little bit about the timeline before the opening retreat. We'll have so the opening retreat, like I shared earlier, will be at Bailey Farms, right at the sort of height of the change season for fall. So it should be super. It should be super beautiful. We have a lot of outdoor space, so we'll practice some Aikido. We'll do the 3-1, which is a little different from how Richard does it at Strozzi, but sort of created by Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. And sort of her and I taught a few sessions here in New York. I believe Angel worked with and trained with Wendy too, so there might be some influence there as well. So perfect space, perfect weather to do outdoor work around some martial arts around grounding and assessing and creating self-awareness around how our leadership is in action. It's pretty spectacular. So obviously this is the free info webinar that we're doing today on August 5th. The application deadline is really soon approaching for August 19th. I'm always open to some exceptions if people need a little bit more time, but certainly that would have to be communicated. Which can be done via email easily, or here today if you all wanted to share some stuff. We will finalize the cohort of the Leo intensive cohort for the fall soon after the application deadline, so you all know and can begin to prepare, which will be August 27th. So everyone that applies will get a response, and that will happen via email on the 27th. And then the organizations, if you're attached to an organization, then that organization will also get a notification a couple of days later of your application process either being accepted or not accepted. I don't anticipate the latter happening too frequently. unless I get a really super crazy application, which is unlikely. And we sort of, in that organizational notification, there's very clear structure and guidelines shared that allows the participant, the LEO participant, to really get um, a deep understanding of what is required by the organization to support, to ensure success. And then we sort of get into like tuition payment, which is technically can also be flexible. One of the things that, so that happened September 5th, and then obviously October 22nd is the opening retreat. One of the things to know here is that Universal Partnership is a national consulting practice that I run. So it's not necessarily an organization or institution. And in order for me to really have the freedom and flexibility to shape my work without having to compromise in any way, a lot of my programs aren't funded in a way by an institution or a foundation. So something important to share with you all in terms of how it's financially structured, just for full transparency. Let me stop there. That's like the timeline before October opening retreat. How do y'all feel about that? Got any questions? Anything you want to share? Okay. Elba asked, do I know when the sessions begin and after the retreat weekend and where? And I do. This information is also, Elba, on the webpage under schedule. And the session dates are there, but the session location is not there. So the first session after the opening retreat is October 28th. And then the next one is November 4th. Next one, oops, where is it? Oh, there it is. Will be November 12th. There's some exceptions where it happens more than a week because there's a holiday coming up, or just trying to really be mindful of people's religious spiritual practices and off days, as well as like any national holidays that might be happening. The program, the intensive, is obviously not structured to like work you all to death, because, well, that's one of the things that is like at the heart of the methodology, to really prioritize and center yourself and your humanity rather than your labor. So there's a few exceptions like that where we'll go like a week and a few days before a session because of something landing a week afterwards. And like I shared earlier, the sessions will be held in New York City. So we have a location that we're in the midst of confirming in the Bronx. That's super accessible. It's a little organization that has a house. There's places to move around it, including a couple of parks. But like I said, it will be in New York City. Just to share that TiVo has left, had to transition to another a meeting he shared, or they shared. Yep, let me stop there. Anything else? Mo, do you want to add anything? You should feel free to chime in here. Anything y'all got before we close?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Apologies. Mándalo, pues.
Sweet. All right, folks. It sounds. Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, just
I'm sorry.
I'm looking forward to meeting.
Mo, you're cutting out. I couldn't really hear that.
Oh, just look at me, everyone.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that either. Every other word got cut off. Do you want to text me? I can share with the group if you text me. Okay. While Mo is doing that, last chance, folks. Anything you want to share? All right, here we go. Where is it? Oh, Mo says that Mo is looking forward to meeting everyone. Let's close. And if anything comes up post this, like, really feel free to reach out to either Mo or myself. Our contacts are on the webpage under our bios. Let's just close quickly. Like, how are you feeling right now? Mo, how are you feeling? Mo's gonna text it. Mo feels great. Alexa, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, my plan to approach the ED of Cypress Hills about this on Wednesday. So just gonna be working on an argument tomorrow and why Danny and I would like to do this fall.
Amazing. Let me know if I can help. Danny,
Thanks
how
so
you
much.
feeling?
I'm feeling ready. I'm gonna convince Alexa to try to convince the executive director. This is how you say, like, everything you were saying just reminded me when I used to be back in Future of Tomorrow when I was in high school. And although I'm currently in community organizing now, it was just good to hear like the refresher of like how the community organizers. I mean, excuse me. It'll be good to get a refresher of like how community organizing began, or base building 101. Given that I learned these things like almost 10 years ago, so it'll be a really good refresher to like to bring this back to our organization, because Cypress Hills, the neighborhood itself, like, they need advocacy. So this is definitely very important for me and Alexa to like participate in this.
Amazing. Thank you. Elba, do you have anything you want to share? Elba wrote that I'm excited to take part. It will be so helpful in my work. I agree. I feel great. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for each of you, including Pivo, who had to run, for really joining, just listening, getting to know this. I hope each of you are apply, and that we'll get to see each other in October. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you.